Hi, welcome to Discovering and Following Your Passions. My name is Ellen Berrings, and I'll be working today with Rachael Potts. And we're going to be talking to you about the process for assisting your son or daughter in exploring options for employment in their future. So when Rachael and I discussed doing this presentation, we really thought first about why do people work? And we decided we would go to some of the students with whom we work and ask them that question, why do you like to work? And some of our students shared this with us. I like to shovel snow and paint in the summer. I like meeting people. I love it because I love cleaning windows and vacuuming and saying hi to people and getting a paycheck. I like the jewelry and putting away the scarves. I like that they gave me a birthday present and flowers on my birthday. This really underscored for us that the primary reason is not necessarily pay that people work. And I think if we all think about why we go to work on a given day or why we volunteer or participate in the community, it's more about making those connections, about feeling important, and about doing things that we value and that make us feel like contributing members, and also provide an opportunity for us to create a web of people who become our colleagues and friends. So when we're developing a profile, we're looking at connections between home, school, and the community. We want to look at strengths, or what does your son or daughter do well? Is she organized? Is he social, detail-oriented, or maybe good with computers? We're also looking at passions or interests. So this is a really good opportunity to take a deeper look at some hobbies or interests that could possibly be linked to a potential job. Does your son or daughter enjoy being around animals, taking hikes in the woods, being on social media sites? So we're also looking at skills, and we're taking a look at their communication skills, their reading and math and computer skills, along with, perhaps fine and gross motor skills. But we also have to keep in mind that certain skills can be fine-tuned with good coaching and practice. We're also looking at values, or what's important to your son or daughter. So perhaps family time is very important, or the amount of money they make at the end of their pay period. All right. So we're able to do some traditional assessments through a number of different ways. One is through the Myers-Briggs type indicator, and that is an inventory that allows students to identify their preferences in 4 different dichotomies. Basically, it results in a 4-letter combination, such as ENFP or INTJ, and there's a large amount of information out there about the 16 possible types, including career suggestions and typical strengths and challenges for each type. So that's a good resource. The Murphy-Meisinger is also based on the same theory as Myers-Briggs, but it's shorter and easier to read. And we found that a lot of students that we work with find this particular inventory to be a little easier to comprehend, the questions and the words presented are basically easier to comprehend. We also work with the Picture Interest Career Survey, or PICS. So this is a great inventory for students who really struggle with decoding or comprehending. They're looking at pictures of people doing various things at work, and pick the picture that matches their interests. We also do some interest profilers. Yep, and we're going to go to a site that will give us some more information about an interest profile that you could use. So this is on VSAC's webpage, Roadmap to College. And if we scroll down here, you'll find that they have an interest profiler right here that you can connect with and use at home. And
it goes to a site called ONET, and the inventory is based on Holland's Code, which includes 6 possible outcomes. Realistic, which are the doers. Investigative are the thinkers. Artistic, creators. Social, helpers. Enterprising, persuaders. And conventional, which are the organizers. And it gives you a lot of information about those codes, which can be helpful in exploring careers. They also have a career notebook that allows you to look at possibly interviewing family members about their careers. Again, some values around what you hope to do in the future and what's important to you. So all of these links are definitely worth a look. So the traditional assessments are great for helping to help a young person start to navigate the world of all the opportunities for work out there. And what's interesting, we often say to the people that we work with now, many of the occupations that are going to exist 10 or 15 years from now, we can't even label. We don't even know what they are. And so one of the other pieces that we like to do is to take students to situational assessments. And these can take lots of different forms and shapes. One of the most productive ones that we use is job shadows. And a job shadow, I like to use the metaphor of buying clothes. And we wouldn't buy clothes without trying them on and seeing how they feel and fit. And a job shadow provides that short-term opportunity where a young person can spend time with a person engaged in an occupation that they're curious to learn more about. And so that person can have questions, they can observe, and sometimes even participate in the tasks that are going on in the job, depending upon what the requirements of that person who is being shadowed can accommodate. And so these are amazing opportunities, and we often work with young people and make sure that they shadow 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 or 6 different occupations so that they have an opportunity to experience things. And we really find that students' experience feeds into their ability to kind of comprehend what a job entails. The other pieces that are incredibly helpful is once a person has done a job shadow and they found some areas that are really of interest to them, doing a more long-term kind of tryout process, and some of those can take on being a volunteer for a local community organization. And often through volunteering, a person builds those transferable skills that help them to become more employable down the road in the future. And so volunteering can help a person build their communication skills, their confidence, they can explore their interests, they can become a more active role in their community. So it's a great opportunity. And volunteering is something that we all want to do for the rest of our lives. So it's a great opportunity for students to get started in being a contributing member of their communities, on top of helping us figure out what students like and are capable of doing. And then finally, we use internships quite readily with our students. And the purpose of an internship is to really negotiate with an employer to be able to have a student come in and actually try out a particular occupation. And what that employer is doing is providing guidance, support, and mentoring to the young person and teaching them about the occupation. And it's a more in-depth look. A young person comes to it with their goals, the things that they really want to learn, and it's great for the employer to share what they think would be valuable for the person to learn. And we've had many young people do an internship, and it can go one of 2 ways. It can be, yes, I would love to do that, but it also is a great way to cross a job off a list to say, no, don't think I ever want to do that job. And that's just as valuable for us because life is a process and you need to try as many opportunities as possible. Another tool that we enjoy using is a thing called maps, which they have been around for a very long time. And what we love about maps, which is making action plans, or you also may find it to be called the McGill Action Planner, it's a process where a young person and the people who support them in their lives get together and really talk about who that person is from many different perspectives and make plans based on that. And what's really awesome about this experience is that a young person gets to be the first participant
and then their family is the second participant. And then if there are any other professional staff that work with that individual, they go after the young person and the family. It really is led by the person, and it's about person-centered planning. And you really look at things like the person's history and their dreams and the places that they want to go. And you also take into concern the fears that the person might have about their future or their family might have about their future. But in the end, you put all the pieces together and it allows you to really think more holistically about what that person and their family is hoping for the future for that young person. So what we really want to underscore is that multiple perspectives are important. It's really important to try lots of different avenues. So you may start with a survey, you may move into a job shadow or volunteering, but all of the information that you collect is a valuable asset to help the person figure out what it is they want to pursue. Some of the other links that we've provided, and one that we're going to show to you today, is the Department of Labor's Occupational Outlook Handbook. So we're going to go out to that link just to show you what it looks like. And we could explore this tool, but it's a great way to get descriptions of occupations that might be of interest to a young person. So if you know what the occupation is, you may do it by alphabetical order, and so you can go, if you know you're looking to be an accountant, you may choose that and select, and it will give you a description. But the handbook also provides you an opportunity to use a search tool. It also provides an opportunity to use an occupation finder, and that occupation finder allows you to even look at level of education. So I might look in this resource, and I may choose less than high school because I'm working with young people who haven't graduated from high school yet, and I might look at occupations here. But I might also be shooting for the future for my young person, and I may want to show them high school diploma, and then I may want to go beyond and show them what it might look like to have some college or no degree or post-secondary education and training. And again, all of this is one resource that you can use. There are many, many resources you can use that provide information on occupations. We wanted to share just this one with you. So another resource that we have, and we're not going to go out to the next two, is the O.N.E.T. Online, which is another site where you can go to and look at lots of different descriptions about occupations. And it's going to give you information about the requirements of the job. It's going to give you information about pay, and it's also going to show you, state by state information that's specific to the state, which is really helpful. The new tool that we were introduced to this year is Pathways to Promising Careers in Vermont. And this is a great resource to kind of look at the up-and-coming occupations that are available to young people as they're considering options for their future. And finally, as a resource for job shadows, we have provided this pretty neat video, and it actually is produced by students, and we use it in a course that we teach and find it very engaging. And it's great to look over prior to going to a job shadow because it talks about what you should do before, during, and after. And it speaks in language that is student-oriented, which is fabulous. So from a young person's perspective, it's a great resource. And it actually is kind of fun to watch. So we highly recommend checking that out. And then, again, reminding you that internships are a great option to conduct more in-depth career research for young people. Okay. And then one other piece that's relatively recent is Act 77, which is the Flexible Pathways legislation that was passed in the legislature actually 2 years ago, and it's rolling out to implementation. And something that we really wanted to highlight is that dual enrollment and early college option that might be appropriate for young people to consider. Dual enrollment is an opportunity where high school students in their junior and senior year are eligible to take a college course for free anywhere in the state college system. UVM also has some opportunities, and many other colleges are lining up options for students that they can engage in. And the other that really neat program is the Early College Program, which has been in existence at Vermont Technical College. The program has been called VAST, which is Vermont Academy of Science and Technology. And early college is occurring in many other campuses around the state as well. And so those are great opportunities for students to explore college in depth at no cost to them or their families. So we really wanted to kind of alert you to the positivity of this legislation. So some other post-secondary options. Actually, Vermont Family Network has a great site that, if we can go to that site, it has a great site that explains, gives a brief synopsis actually of each program that's available to Vermont families. And they include things like Project Search and Global Campus. We also think college is a great option for some of our students. Succeed. I have yet to, we haven't had the opportunity to work with a student who has participated in one of these programs yet, but we're looking forward to one of our students attending next year. So that should be an interesting insight into some post-secondary options for us. So that's a great resource. And there's also some training available through Resource and Job Corps, Vermont Youth Conservation Corps, and various technical centers. Resource is located in Burlington, and they offer apprenticeship-style training for office administration, appliance repair, assistive technology, and medical equipment repair. Job Corps is located in Vergennes, and they also have a number of programs, including automotive technology and some other really great programs. Our technical center, I think it really depends on your sending school, where your student would be going to a technical center. So our particular one offers things like baking arts, cosmetology, building trades, automotive, human services, digital media arts, plumbing, and heating. And those are often a very good resource for students to take advantage of through their high school. And again, at no cost to the student. So they can often graduate with a certificate and some really good training underneath their belt. And as well, they offer opportunities for students to do apprenticeships through the technical centers. So Ellen and I like to talk about each student graduating with a toolbox. So what are some necessary items that students need to really succeed after high school? And the first is a resume. It's important for students to document all the things, all their experiences in high school. And you can actually find a really good resource on Google Resume Template. So if you go to Google, the search tool, and type in Google Resume Template, you'll find a number of templates that you can use. And you just want to make sure that you have a Gmail account in some way or another, and that can be saved throughout your child's lifetime in their Google Drive. So, and we'll explain a little bit more about each one of these in just a few minutes. So cover letter also there's some great templates through Google. Applications, both online and written. It's important that students practice writing applications and they're familiar with the different types of applications. Some businesses only offer online applications, so it's important to really have that discussion around professional language, even over a internet site where some teenagers tend to like to use a more casual type of language online. So that's something that we give direct instruction around. Also interview skills and interview follow-up skills. So we'll go a little bit more into detail right now about those things. So here's a sample resume. This is something that, again, is through a Google Resume template.
And you want to make sure, the average employer takes about 6 to 10 seconds to look at your resume. So you want to make sure that everything is spelled correctly, it's pleasing to the eye, and it's organized and to the point. So we've always started out with an objective, and the objective gives us the reason why the student is using this particular resume. Then for this student, we look at internship experience, because Cora at this point doesn't have any work-related experience, but the internship experience is absolutely valuable to mention. So the student, is looking for a position working with children, and so she mentions her experience working at a local daycare and her responsibilities working at that daycare. We also talk about, we encourage kids to write about their education, any awards that they may have received, and perhaps favorite classes or classes that may relate then to the job that they are looking to get. So if a student is looking to get a daycare position, they might have taken some child psychology classes, or they may have participated in a tech program, human services tech program. So those are important to mention. Then we've got extracurricular activities and interests. Again, anything that the student may be doing in a more structured form, so after-school activities, or clubs and sports and that sort of thing, and also things that they just might be generally interested in doing. It's a good point to for employers to see what are their interests, and it may lead to some good conversations. So summary of qualifications, these are things that students can talk about, they're things that they feel like they excel in. So, they might be able to work with Microsoft Word applications, or they might be good at various social media sites or networking sites. Those are important points to mention, because a lot of businesses are now reaching out in social media to get out their product or their message in some way, shape, or form. So we also encourage students at this level to include their references, put phone numbers down, and there's also lots of room on the template to change your headings. So if your particular son or daughter has some volunteer experience, that's important to mention. If they have work experience, again, that's very important to mention. And even if they've done a number of job shadows, that would be excellent to highlight as well.
So another really important tool to include is the cover letter. And the cover letter, we like to say that the resume is the skeleton of the job applicant, and the cover letter puts some flesh and personality onto it. And a cover letter allows for an applicant to be able to share information about themselves that would be really valuable. It also is an opportunity to grab an employer. And as Rachael said, a resume often gets 6 to 8 seconds at that first glance while the employer is deciding, I'm going to look further at this, or I'm going to recycle this. And so it's really important that the cover letter grab them as well. And a cover letter is more appropriate when you're applying to a job that's not necessarily an entry-level position, although it can really help for a young person who doesn't have a lot of experience, so that they can highlight the experience that they do have that may not necessarily be in the work world, but is in the volunteer world, is part of their family responsibilities, things that they've done at school, and be able to make those direct connections. The cover letter, as you can see, is very professionally formatted, and we really underscore with young people that it's important that this letter be very professional, yet also show some personality. One of the things that we really highlight with students is that email address. And it's really important that the email address be professional. And so we've sometimes guided some young people to not have their email address be sweetiepie123 because we think that's not going to grab an employer. So it's really important to potentially, you could use the school email address. Most students have that. And the other great resource is
Gmail, because students can really use a more professional demeanor in that email address. It's really helpful if you know the actual name of the contact to whom you're sending this letter. And if you don't, it's acceptable, but it's ideal if you know the person to whom you want this letter to actually, whose desk you want it to be on, and then what their address is and information. The letter itself has three main components. That first paragraph is the introduction, and it really, you want to try to have a grabber where the employer really gets to know you in a glance, and also what the purpose of the letter is. And so you want to make sure that you're in that first paragraph, you're letting them know that you're interested in a position with them. The body of the letter is incredibly important, and it's the place where the young person demonstrates knowledge of the position and what it requires, and also matches the skills that they possess with the job requirements and does it in a really cohesive way. And so it's really important for a young person to target specifically what that employer might be looking for and address the skills they possess. The closing paragraph, and really what you want for an outcome with a cover letter, is an interview. You want to get your foot in the door and let them meet you. And so you want to highlight that you would very much like to meet with a person. And one of the things that we always underscore with young people with whom we work is that it's really important that you leave the contact in your hands. And so you tell the person when you'll be following up on this letter, and you normally give it 1 to 2 weeks to allow the person to have your letter. And then it's really important to follow up within the time frame that you have designated. And that does one of two things. First, the ball is in your court, and you have some control over it. And the second thing is it demonstrates for the employer that you are a person of your word. And so the first thing they learn about you is that reliability and responsibility. It's important to provide your contact information. So a young person wants to make sure that that contact information is readily accessible in this cover letter. So depending upon your son or daughter's communication needs, and we have to think about this with young people we support as well. If a young person needs some assistance with communication or uses augmentative communication, sometimes you can contact the employer ahead of time and request the interview questions if you think that is going to facilitate a more productive interview. And we've done that so that a young person has time to be able to think, reflect, and even prepare their communication device with some of the responses they'd like to provide. It's a helpful tool for some students, but not for all and not necessary, but something to consider. Another resource that we have found incredibly helpful with young people is from a website. It's called Quint Careers, and there's tons of resources on this website. But one of the pieces that we've pulled up to show to you today is on this website. They have some incredible resources on interviewing. And we use this a lot with the young people with whom we work. They have an interview question database that's unbelievable. It has 150 different interview questions. They also provide an opportunity if a person wants to look at interview questions with sample responses, and that's a really great resource. They even have a tutorial that you can go through if you go through the tutorial section. Some of the fun parts of this is they have wild, crazy interview questions as well. So questions that might be a little more off the wall. And it's really fun because some employers will ask more unusual questions. We happen to be in the world of Ben & Jerry's, and we know that Ben & Jerry's asks questions like, if you were a tree, what kind of tree would you like to be and why? And so we like to have students have that experience of knowing what to do if they're asked a question that's a little unusual. So it's really, really important for a young person to practice and prepare for an interview with multiple people. So if a young person can actually prepare for an interview with a young person, with another adult with whom they might not be so familiar, that can be really powerful as well, especially if that person can give them constructive feedback. But preparation for the interview is highly helpful. So just in terms of job development, it's important that you really use all of your resources to help build a network of potential jobs. So reach out to friends and families, to friends and family, and ask them, about their experiences in their careers and if there are any potential openings. Also, we've used Front Porch Forum not only to find jobs, but to post jobs that students would like to do out in the community, and we've gotten some really good responses from that. Craigslist is another good option to use. I actually searched Craigslist yesterday and found that there were 91 postings of jobs within the state of Vermont, just under food, beverage, and hospitality. So, that's across the state, but a lot of it is in and around Chittenden County. So Craigslist shouldn't be overlooked. Also, local newspapers, classifieds. That's a good resource to use, and one that Ellen and I often use to network with our community. I've got a student who has done some self-advertising, so he made up some posters with the tabs underneath that had his email address, and he posted those all over town and checked his email on a regular basis to see if he had any customers, and that was a successful way to get out his services and his need for work. So we also do a lot of phone calls. We make a lot of phone calls, and that is, we're calling employers to see if they have any potential openings. So it can be really, we hear a lot of no's, and that's completely fine. I think the more you call and you're able to establish a relationship with your the community members and the employers in your area, it's an excellent way to find potential jobs, because they're not always advertising, or they might have something that's coming up in a couple of weeks, and it's important to follow up on those. Also, social networking, things like Facebook. If you have if your son or daughter is skilled in a certain area and you want to get the message out that he or she is looking for a particular job, it's a great way to start making those contacts and again, opening up the doors to potential jobs. So we work under a progressive employment model, and this allows really, once a student has been able to get out into the community and do some job shadows and some internships, we're starting to look at some things that he or she could do that they could get paid for. So, so they've gained the necessary skills, the soft skills in their internships, and now we're looking for paid employment. And so we approach the employers to really be open to this progressive employment model, so that students come in and have perhaps like a 4-week training period, and then from there we kind of reassess to see if this is a good match both on the employer's end and on the student's end. And if that's the case, we then ask for a paid position. So I find that employers are a lot more receptive to that, because it depending on the student, it might be a little bit more of a risk for them. And also for the student, it might take just a little bit more time for them to learn particular skills that are necessary for that job. We provide job coaches through our school, and they're worth their weight in gold. They are phenomenal, and provide a lot of support for the student when necessary. And really the ultimate goal of a job coach is to kind of be in the shadows. So they provide support when necessary. So for efficiency, perhaps a student needs a little bit more support in reading a task list of some sort. And then we like to fade those supports through time. So it's also, there's an option for a job coach through respite funds too. So that's something to look at when school is not in session. We're interested in developing natural supports. That is our ultimate goal. That again, that our job coaches are there when necessary, and that actually the employers are working directly with the student to make sure all the necessary supports are there.
One of the other supports that has really expanded this year is working with vocational rehabilitation transition specialists. And Voc Rehab has now expanded their support to high school students on IEPs and 504s and providing those transition services 9 through postgraduate. So many high schools, I say postgraduate because many high schools may have students stay longer with them to meet their transition goals beyond the traditional senior year. So, so that is an opportunity for you to connect with a vocational rehabilitation person that will be assigned to your local school. And so we're just now collaborating with the folks that will be doing that. In our school, and I believe it's statewide, the transition specialists will be working either 9 through 11 and then 12 through postgraduate. And so they will specialize in those areas working with young people, and they will work with parents as well. So it's a requirement that they sit and meet with the student and the parents and complete the paperwork that's necessary prior to starting to work with your son or daughter. But they are available, and the resources are starting to grow in that way. Often we work with the employer to troubleshoot. And so one of the important components of this is whoever is supporting that young person in having the job, it's important to maintain regular communication with the employer. And should an obstacle present itself, it's really important to troubleshoot with the employer to come up with strategies to overcome those obstacles. Sometimes that is assisted by working with service providers that may be on your son or daughter's team. So often we have students who receive physical therapy or occupational therapy. The occupational therapist can be incredibly helpful on a job when a student might have fine or gross motor issues that are making certain tasks on the job more difficult, and be able to provide ideas about modifications for the job. We have a student who one of his tasks is that he needs to be able to close and tie plastic bags. And the occupational therapist was an invaluable resource for us for coming up with strategies to help the student be independent on that task, which was really important to him. And as Rachel mentioned before, there's the option for entrepreneurship. And so we do work with students who are embarking on their own opportunities for employment, creating their own employment situations. And this can be appropriate for many, many students. But what we take into account is the profile of the young person. And so one of the students with whom Rachel's working now just loves to be outside. It's really important for him, and it's more about the task than it is about social contact. Another person that we work with is highly charged to be in a social environment. It would be very difficult for this person to be in an entrepreneurship if she weren't having direct contact with the public on a regular basis. So it's important when you think about entrepreneurship to find that business that's created that also feeds the passions of the young person. And the big word that we put in all caps is persistence. It takes time and energy and persistence, just as it did for all of us to discover our career paths over time. And sometimes you have to deal with a lot of no's before you get the perfect yes. But usually the no's were not the right option anyway. We have been incredibly fortunate in our community. I do think our community provides many opportunities for students and young people throughout the ranks that we have at our school. And it's just been an incredible opportunity. the other kind of advantage is that many of our employers are parents, and so they understand that all young people need an opportunity to get started in the world. And so that's an incredible, helpful aspect. So we'll move on to a few questions that have been asked. The first one is, do you think it's fair to ask a possible employer for the questions in advance if the individual has autism so they can prepare in advance, because questions on the spot may be difficult for the person to answer thoroughly? And absolutely, I think it is totally appropriate to ask a potential employer to provide the questions in advance. And I've done so on many occasions, and I've worked with the speech and language pathologist to develop responses that the student has taken time to really think about, and in some cases program into their device so that that can be communicated to them directly while in the interview. And it also is important, I think, for the students, for some students who, again, struggle with comprehension, to be able to really talk about the question and the meaning of the question before answering. So I really, I have not had any problems with employers providing that information to me beforehand. Another question that we received is, which respite funds allow for someone to act as a job coach? And that's a really good clarifying question. Not all families have access to respite funds. And so if a family has flexible family funding, they are often able to use some of the respite funds that they might have a young person potentially have a weekend away or have some time after school. It might be valuable to look at the person that is providing that respite to see if they could provide some support on the job. Potentially, it could be an after-school job, which is not uncommon for a young person in high school, and so potentially maybe that respite provider could be that option to be able to support that student through the employment process. And if the respite provider is unsure about the process, there could be resources at school. The vocational rehabilitation transition counselors may be great resources on strategies to use on the job to support a young person. And there are also resources online, some amazing resources that are available to provide some options and strategies for providing support in the community to a young person. And, you know, as Rachel said, the important piece, we always say that a job coach should try to work their way out of their job, and that's the ultimate goal, is to have the person working as independently as they possibly can, because we all want to be as independent as we possibly can. So another question we have is, how do you work with vocational rehabilitation and special educators? So Ellen and I work very closely with our special educators at our school, and we meet on a regular basis, weekly basis, for a more formal meeting where we discuss our students and how we can best support them and what phone calls need to be made or emails that need to be made. So it's actually, the special educators are our contact to home, and then we contact the employers. So we work together to create the system where, you know, if a student has work on a certain day and they're also scheduled for a medical appointment, you know, that communication is happening not only between the parents but also with the employers. So, and we also meet with our representative from Voc Rehab, I would say probably once a month, once every 2 months, to discuss our students and the need for some students to be signed up for Voc Rehab and be able to access their services. But we provide a little bit more, well, we work with Voc Rehab to provide some more in-depth experiences for our students. And that has been a great working relationship. And we also provide them with, you know, some of the materials that we've been able to work with students on.
that they can transition a little bit easier. So for example, a resume, we make sure that their voc rehab counselor gets the resume that they've been working on in high school, and then they transition on from there.
We have another question. Do you have particular employers around the state who are more open to employing young people with disabilities? What kind of education to provide employers when approaching them about this possibility? Often individuals with disabilities are excellent employees. I would say always individuals with disabilities are excellent employees, but they may need a little extra time in the beginning. And that is absolutely true. And so this is an excellent question. It would be hard for me to target specific employers around the state. We work in a fairly rural community, and so we're working with smaller employers. We do have some large employers in our region, and honestly, the large employers haven't been the easiest nuts to crack, if I'm to be really honest. We find more of our local community employers provide opportunities for our young people. And often, and I think Rachael is really great at this, we carve jobs for students. So we may get to know what a business does and know what a student has strengths, passions, and interests in, and help to kind of connect those two. And so we may contact an employer and say, I have a young person who is incredibly organized and could really make your shelves look fabulous, and be able to kind of talk to them about the skills that the young person possesses. They have great matching skills, they have great reading skills, they enjoy being physically active, they would interact well with your customers as they wander through the aisles looking for product. And I think this person would be a great match for this particular type of job. And that often is a great way to go, is to start from the person and find those opportunities that are a better fit for them with employers that provide those opportunities. And when we talk with an employer, we don't lead with the disability. What we lead with is what the strengths, as you just heard me say. My young person is organized, they read well, they have great ability to interact with customers, the things that I know that employer is looking for first. And then what we describe, because we don't want to disclose a person's labeling disability, because we really believe that that's not essential for an employer to know, we say that the person is going to be working with a job coach, and the job coach provides that additional support that they might need to ramp up and become more proficient in the job. And that's really what we talk about with an employer. So hopefully that helps answer that question.
And just one last question is, do students get paying jobs too? And I think that's it's a great question, and the answer is absolutely. So we pay, and we're really clear with the employers that that our job coaches are Harwood's employees, and under the progressive employment model, the students will become your employees. So they have that period of time where they are working to gain the necessary skills. We reevaluate, and at that time, if the student is working efficiently and they're happy with the outcome, it absolutely is imperative that they get paid at least at minimum wage for what they are doing. So we have, our goal is for each student to have 25 hours. I should say our goal for each student in our postgraduate program, so students that we have until the age of 22, our goal is for them to have 25 hours of paid employment, because that is a priority in terms of funding for these students to have 25 hours. Now, in some cases, we work with students who 25 hours would be way too much for them to handle because of maybe some health issues or just their particular stamina. They can't, it's really difficult for them to do that 25 hours. So, so we gear that down a little bit. But actually we have been pretty successful, when the IEP team comes together and we discuss our goal for the student, and it's really important for the parents to chime in at that point. And I have some parents who are, would rather not go up to the 25 hours, but we talk about the goal and we really work hard towards getting that, that paid employment to whatever it is that we need it to be at before the student graduates. So, one, do you want to answer this one?
All right, so we're going to take this final question, and it is, what do you do if the disability is invisible to people on first meetings? People who are verbal, who have autism and high IQs come across as challenging if you are unaware of the disability, but the individual may not want to disclose it. And I think that last phrase is the most challenging part, because I think it's really important for a young person to learn how to become an advocate for themselves, and sometimes becoming an advocate means talking to an employer about your challenges as well as your strengths, or the areas that you might need support in, so that an employer is aware, or allowing the person who's supporting them to be able to help them and advocate for that. So sometimes we may more obtusely kind of talk about that with an employer and say, you know, this is a young person who has great verbal skills, but may need some assistance in organization, or may need some assistance and is reticent to ask for help because they don't want to seem like they don't understand. And so we kind of give the employer some insight into the person, as long as it's okay to the person. We do not want to step on the person's individual rights. We want to really support them. We do have one more question that came in. So have you ever graduated a student with a job with more than 25 hours? And yes, the answer to that question is yes. Some students actually graduate with you know, up to 30 to 35 hours of employment. It really depends on the person and their employment. Check it out. Just read that.
So I guess we keep saying we'll take one more, but we will take one more. Do you provide job coaching opportunities if a high school student wants to get experience maybe during the summer before graduating? So we do. We provide job coaching and case management over the summer to allow students to get internship experience, because we often know that sometimes during the school year, if the student is involved with their classes, you know, transportation can be an issue. We do provide some job coaching if the team deems that necessary over the summer. And you know, short-term experiences like that can be very valuable when they don't have other distractions and commitments during the school year. Okay, so that is the end of our presentation. And we want to thank you for joining us today for today's webinar. Please visit VFN's website at vermontfamilynetwork.org for helpful resources, upcoming webinars, and other workshops and events. This webinar will be archived along with all of our other webinars and can be viewed on Vermont Family Network's YouTube channel. If you would like to talk with someone at Vermont Family Network, please call 1-800-800-4005 and have a great day.